Pop Quiz, Year 3, Unit 2, Age of Industry and Expansion. Welcome to Year 3, Unit 2. Let's continue our in-depth study of the 19th century. Unit 2 covers the second quarter of the century, from 1825 to 1850. We've titled this unit The Age of Industry and Expansion, for good reason. In both Europe and America, the Industrial Revolution reordered and defined the growth of cities, old and new. Additionally, in both England and America, expansionism dominated the era. Great Britain was building an international empire, while American settlers went to the American West. Two major political figures dominated these years. During 1837 in England, Queen Victoria began her 63-year reign. She and her husband, Prince Albert, would have 9 children together and become living examples of Victorian family values. In America, Andrew Jackson was elected president in 1828 and served 2 terms. Through the force of his personality and convictions, Jackson not only defined the presidency, but also became the standard-bearer of the newly created Democratic Party, and he strongly influenced 3 of the 4 presidents who followed him. Victoria's Britain was limited in natural resources. England wanted foreign colonies to keep her growing industries supplied with raw materials and markets for finished goods. Victoria's empire grew as a result. We'll be looking at European imperialism in detail in Unit 3, but younger students in this unit will spend time on 2 of Britain's most interesting colonies, Australia and New Zealand. Older students will follow another European thread, the suppression of popular uprisings on the continent. Conservative, powerful monarchs and ministers of state sought to repress the freedoms of expression and assembly as they clung to their old ways of governing. The irrepressible forces of freedom churned and boiled below the apparently tranquil European landscapes, erupting violently in 1830 and again in 1848. Though the established regimes continued to dominate Europe in this era, the revolutions laid important groundwork for significant changes in later decades of the 19th century. America had the opposite experience. The American government was all for individualism and nationalism. For most white male Americans, the age of Jackson increased their freedoms. Immediately before and during Jackson's administration, the right to vote was granted to an increasing number of white men. Jackson believed that America was a land that belonged to the people. He trusted that, given the chance, the common people would collectively make the right decisions for the nation. For Jackson, however, the people did not include black slaves, Native Americans, or women, though thousands of these people lived within the country's borders. Younger children will learn about the fate of the 5 civilized nations and their trail of tears under Jackson's tough Indian Removal Act. Older students will read about the hardships of blacks and the challenges of women during this era. During the 25-year period that we cover in this unit, American borders expanded westward significantly. During the 18th and 19th centuries, many Americans crossed into the Mexican-owned territory of Texas and had built thriving settlements there. When the Mexican president, Santa Anna, threatened to expel them, American settlers fought back and won the independence of Texas in 1836. Later, Americans entered into another war with Mexico, from 1846 to 1848, winning more territory. In the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, Mexico ceded lands that would become the states of California, Nevada, Utah, and Arizona, plus parts of Colorado and New Mexico. The age of Jackson was a colorful one in many ways. It was a time of tremendous energy, dynamic change, and eager, if naive, expectancy of good in many areas, not the least of which was America's religious life. Rhetoric students who are following the church history thread will read about the most prominent religious figures of this age, Charles Finney and Joseph Smith. Finney preached a message that was right in step with the values of progress and American can-doism. He taught that far from being a passive and mystical experience, salvation was a choice that all men can make. They need not wait on God to bring either salvation or sanctification. Both had already been provided by God, but it was up to each man and woman to reach out and grasp them. Both science and progress taught that men could master their destiny if only they were moved to. Finney determined to move Americans through passionate preaching at large-scale modern revival meetings, and he taught others to do the same. Joseph Smith preached a new message, which he said was revealed to him through visions and golden plates which he translated in secrecy. His church, the Latter-day Saints, claimed a new revelation beyond the Bible. The beliefs and practices of the Mormons, as they became known, upset their Orthodox Christian neighbors. During the first 15 years of the church's existence, Mormons were often threatened or attacked. They responded by moving farther and farther west. Finally, the church as a whole migrated to the Utah Territory, their permanent home base for national and international expansion. During the same period, George Mueller was learning deep lessons of faith in England that would inspire Christians around the globe. Dialectic students have the opportunity to read about Mueller's life as this unit unfolds. So here's a preview of coming attractions, week by week. Our time frame, 1825 to 1850. We studied the administrations of 7 American presidents: John Quincy Adams, Andrew Jackson, Martin Van Buren, William Henry Harrison, John Tyler, James Polk, and Zachary Taylor. Jackson dominated the era. Of those listed, only Harrison, who served 1 month, and Taylor were Whigs. All the rest governed according to Jacksonian values, as articulated by his Democratic Party. Week 10 kicks us off with the study of 1824 through 1828 and the administration of John Quincy Adams. That election was disputed, so Adams was not able to enact many of his policies. He was constantly hamstrung by followers of Andrew Jackson, who criticized Adams, stalled his initiatives, and planned his defeat in the 1828 election. Weeks 11 and 12 have the 2 administrations of Andrew Jackson in focus. His tenure was from 1829 to 1837. Students should enjoy learning about this larger-than-life man who so dominated his age. In church history, we studied Charles Finney and the Second Great Awakening. In weeks 13 and 14, our gaze turns to Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. According to their learning levels, your kids will learn about the coronation and early reign of Queen Victoria, everyday life in Victorian England, and the histories of Australia and New Zealand, which were at this time parts of Victoria's empire. These are a fun couple of weeks for students of all ages. We recommend some variations on the normal approach to our history studies, including mini reports for both the dialectic and rhetoric students. Younger children will enjoy learning about the amazing wildlife of Australia and New Zealand. Older students also study the attempts of many Europeans on the continent to assert rising desires for democratic or nationalistic reforms during the revolutions of the 1880s. In week 15, we return our focus to America. With Jackson's support, Martin Van Buren became president in 1837, but he only served 1 lackluster term. During his watch, some of Jackson's less attractive policies concerning Native Americans and the National Bank came home to roost. Van Buren bore the responsibility for the Cherokees' walk on the Trail of Tears and the Panic of 1837. He was ousted after only 1 term in favor of Whig candidates, William Henry Harrison and his running mate, John Tyler. Harrison died in his first month in office, raising the constitutional question of how a president should be succeeded. Tyler was a Whig in name only, and he proceeded to govern in his own unique way, which included vetoing almost the entire Whig agenda. Tyler became a president without a party or a cabinet as things unfolded, but he proved that he could govern without either. During his final days in office, Tyler enjoyed a major coup as Congress annexed the Texas territory. Excited by this development, journalists promoted the idea that America should, by rights, expand to control North American lands from sea to shining sea. It was their manifest destiny to carry the blessings of liberty and prosperity to a waiting world. In week 16, your students will learn about James K. Polk, who was elected in 1844 and served for only 1 term. Historians have called him one of the most successful presidents in history because he made specific and significant campaign promises, and he kept them all. During Polk's administration, American territory was doubled after a brief war with Mexico and successful treaty negotiations with Great Britain. Polk was able to stabilize national finances and welcome Texas into the Union as a state as well. Interesting features of this week plan are that students will begin a 3-week survey of the landforms of western states as they learn about America's westward expansion. Students will also study important new inventions, like the electric telegraph. In week 17, the theme of Manifest Destiny continues as we study the details of Western movement along the Oregon Trail. Older students will read about the effects of the Irish potato famine on the increasing eastern American population, too. Week 18 wraps up our unit with a 2-year term of President Zachary Taylor. Students will learn a variety of interesting details as they finish up their study of westward expansion with tales of the California Gold Rush of 1848 and 49. Depending on their learning levels, they'll also be studying the Seneca Falls Women's Rights Convention, the waves of revolution in Europe in 1848, and some details about the teachings of Karl Marx. That's the blow-by-blow. Throughout the unit, we'll see certain themes recurring. We've titled this unit The Age of Industry and Expansion, but we could also call it The Gathering Storm. There was no question that it was morning in America. The young nation was growing in size and strength. But dark clouds were gathering that threatened America's bright morning with a coming storm. America's attempts to defuse tensions over slavery just postponed the inevitable. But we'll study the Civil War in Unit 3.